Hey everyone, and welcome to the Reading Crossbow podcast. My name is Lena, and I am here with my co-host Rob to talk about his selection of books today. Rob, let's hear it.
As usual, I'm excited to talk to you about this book because I am very confident that we're going to have very different opinions on this book because it is an unusual story. And
It is.
the book we're talking about today is called The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. And this actually really was a very interesting choice because I picked it based on the cover. I
It's
was
a cool cover. Yeah,
I,
I'll give it that.
I was in my local bookstore, and I just happened to walk by, and that cover. I don't know whether it's because we've been reading some cyberpunk or because I've been reading a lot of Mark Berg role playing game books, which are also very flashy in their design sensibility. But this book just jumped out at me, and I was like, and then so I read the back of the jacket, and I was like, I'm interested in this book. Just to start off with, how are you feeling about this book? What's your vibe?
Can you read my vibe right now? Like what signals am I giving off? I'm curious.
Passive aggressive, hostile.
Oh God.
That's what I'm getting.
Touche. Touche. Okay. Yeah, this book started off actually super strong for me. I don't know if you're surprised to hear that, but I just kind of poured into it like an incredibly, like a really cool opening character with, I think her name's Focine. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that, but I pronounced it Focine. So I was really drawn in, and this is only like 340 pages. It goes by really fast. And so I think I made it to like, I don't know, page 60, 70, like fast, tore through it and was like, this is gonna be a great book. I'm so proud of Rob. Another good book. Like, wow. So cool. All the things I love. Kind of a bit of witchcraft. It feels like it. Like a sense that magic is going to pull from like the earth, which I love, but also pull like from some unknown source. And then also just like some love kind of triangle building in there. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. But then comes like not just weird Rob and viewers, but like, what the like true. And I've said that before, Rob. I've said it before. And a lot of the elements in this book, we're going to get to it. Trigger warnings. Hello, people. Let's get into those in a bit. But, uh, and it's things I don't even care about reading. Like, I think all in all, the individual topics that she picked up on to try to make people squirm and the horror and to make them feel like, oh, this is like pushing boundaries, those aren't topics that typically push boundaries for me. But the way that there's so many of them, I was just icked. I was icked early and not in the way she wanted. I was icked on like, why am I reading this? I hate it.
Okay,
I took
so
too long to answer your question.
so I did not feel that way, and in fact, at all. So,
Wow.
but
Not
before we
surprised.
but before we get into it, let's just give the audience a general idea of what this book is about.
Sure,
So,
you do that.
So the book starts off at Castle Amar, and it has been under siege for a long time. In fact, at the start of this book, they only have about 2 weeks of food left for the residents of the castle. And they're already like at the barest of rations, like as far as like rationing out food. So if they only have 2 weeks left of that, I mean, everyone is just starving to death. And we're introduced to our three main characters. Focine, which is she's a former nun and now perceived as this heretic witch, like a pet of the king. We have Servoine, and she is this like decorated war hero that's almost become like this trophy piece of the king. He just likes to show her off, like, hey, look at my cool war hero. And our third protagonist is Trela, and she is this former noble, now almost a street rat, like just doing whatever needs to be done to get by. And they all have their complicated backstories, and they're all interwoven with one another. But as the city is running out of food, desperation is starting to set in, and they're starting to make the hard choices, like the dogs and just the normal dead people who die are now being brought onto the dinner table. But they're saving the horses because we are still at war. But very difficult choices are being made right now when, like a miracle, the saints arrive. And with them, they bring a bounty of food, and everyone rejoices. Or, well, they're rejoicing, but as the audience, we are well aware of the horror that's about to occur. Because these are not the good guys, these saints. They are, they're answering someone's prayers.
Not mine. Not my prayers. Definitely, not mine at all. Intriguing, though. I mean, I liked the idea of the saints. Like, that part of the book was actually kind of cool for me. The fact that they could be, like, demonic in nature made it more fun. So, yeah, not an issue with the book there. But I think we talked about this a little bit before we decided to record this episode. Like, what format should we take? Because this is something that we typically do. We normally have a format where we like to go through the characters, what we loved about the book, what we didn't like about the book. If there's a map, we do that. There's no map. We like to go over the magic system, sometimes the spice rating, and then they rate the book. But I think we agreed that we're just going to kind of throw all that out the window. Because I, for one, am like, I don't have a lot of good to say. There's some good, but like, I guess I have a lot of hopes, wishes what the book could have been, a lot of questions as to why, and I think mostly just a lot of curiosity after reading it and a strong desire to never read it again or anything like it again for that matter. But I'm unsure of quite where to start, but I'm thinking it's probably best for the viewer to have you tell them what you liked about the book.
Okay.
Before I destroy everything.
All right. So this book describes itself as being a gothic horror, and it very much kind of falls into that genre of stories. But you could also describe it as an allegory or a folk tale in the way this story is being told, because there's even almost this dreamlike and morality tale that's being told through these characters. In fact, this entire book is just overloaded with symbolism. Almost everything that comes across in this book really is symbolic of these characters and their journey in life. And I feel like this is the good kind of symbolism. Some symbolism in books just like browbeats you over the head and be like, haha, see how clever my symbol is? And this isn't that. It is a lot more subtle than that. But it is almost everything is symbolic, especially as you get into the later parts of this book where it has an almost dreamlike or perhaps nightmarish quality to it. And I think that's the part I like the most, is just the way these elements of the story, tell you more information than what's actually written on the page. And I really enjoyed that about this book.
Glad you did. Again, I'm trying so hard not to retract, but I see there's no trying hard. I hated the symbolism in it. Like, because I was like, oh, this probably means something. I don't care enough. And reading between the lines, no, who has time for that? Like, I don't want to do that. I just didn't want to. And I was constantly questioning about the honey. There's honey through all this, and honeybees, and it's everywhere. And I did not bother. Would love to hear your ideas, but before we do that, I think this book could have benefited from epigraphs before each chapter. It was a small book, and there is this really cool element of like who these saints are, as you said, and there ends up being a mysterious saint too throughout the book that's not part of the obvious saints that we have coming into the castle to rescue these people under siege. And so I would have actually liked a story from the beginning a bit, at the beginning of each chapter, sort of like your Mistborn do or something like that. Like, I've seen in some books, I don't think it's as successful. Like on Elantris, I didn't like the epigraphs on that, but I did like them on Mistborn. So it's just, I really think I would have liked to know, like, when the world began, there was these 4 gods that fell. Something like that would have been cool.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but like and what I mean about like some of the symbolism is things like it takes a lot of things that you normally think of as like faith-based actions, like fasting. In this book, basically the people who fast, the people who avoid the food being brought by these saints, that's basically your only way to survive, is because the accepting that food is a corruption. Even though they seem like the good guys, you know, fasting is very much promoted. There's a whole thing about with the bees, where bees are normally seen as being very, like, honey is one of the safest foods you can eat because it's naturally antibiotic. It doesn't really get corrupted very easily. And yet in this book it does, because that's showing the corruption of these people, or these beings that are the invaders, as they at one point get called. And but it's at the same time, it's also like a subversion of faith, because all the faithful people in this story immediately fall under the sway of the invaders. And yet it's the heretic and the lost girl who are the ones who are able to resist them, because they dare to ask questions. They dare to dissent against authority. And so it is both, pushing the idea of faith and resisting or subverting the traditional tropes of faith at the same time. And I found that to be an interesting way of telling this story.
I mean, I guess I did find one element of that interesting. On the plot with the saints, is that it does parallel like our real world a bit, especially with Catholicism, where it's not. We didn't really mention this, but these saints they revere. They're not necessarily gods, but they're like prayed to and worshipped a little bit, if you will, kind of like your Saint Mary's or your Saint Teresa's in Catholicism, something like that, where we maybe put them on a candle or have them on a necklace and, appreciate them for the work that they did. So these people have this idea of these saints in their minds. And so when these invaders, as you mentioned, walk into this city to save them, their saviors, they're in this image. But here's the thing is, were these saints always this way? Are they the real saints? Are they the real saints that these people revere and worship in their churches? Or are they imposters? It's never actually fully clear, but it becomes curious when these saints don't behave as they would have expected them to. So, we're going to church every week or every day, how often they're worshiping, and now suddenly your saint walks through your giant castle gates and you're like, oh, we're saved, the saints are here. But then they're asking very weird things of you, and that's odd to them. So I did really enjoy that and trying to piece that together. So I'm with you on that, on the religious references and trying to piece those together. I think where some of that fell apart for me is I still don't feel like it was solved or like it fully came together, which is where I feel this story might have even been better, either longer, when I mentioned having the epigraphs and like just putting a bit more into it, or actually shorter, like a short story. I think a portion of this book could have been pulled out, written a bit better, especially the part about the saints coming in and maybe expanding upon that and how it shocks the village of like, whoa, 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 I have you on my wall in my kitchen. Like, I pray to you every night. What the hell? Like, I would have read that short story and loved it. So definitely interesting to me, like fun to read that part, at least.
So a lot of the symbolism has to do with power and power dynamics, because both the saints and some of the other supernatural beings in this book all operate under a form of power where it's transactional. So you have to give something to receive something. And the scale of these transactions doesn't even have to seem balanced. Like, there's one transaction where it's like, they're like, hey, we'll teach you. The saints are offering to teach something. And the person's like, yeah, I don't want to make that deal. And they're like, but it's going to be really neat. We'll teach you something that's just going to give you a lot of power. And she's like, what would you be willing to trade? And she's like, I will trade you not killing me for you teaching me. And they're like, yeah, that sounds like a pretty good deal. And it makes no sense, except for it is this trade of power. And it shows up in other ways, like one of the girls is very independent, and yet she she does enjoy being choked a little bit, because it does change her power dynamic, especially with the specific person. It's a more of a personal relationship, but it is a power dynamic that comes up in this story. And this comes up with many of the interactions of these characters among the main characters, as well as with the saints, is how they trade their power and with one another, and their influence, even if it's very below the subtext of the actual conversation. And I really enjoy the way they do this. Like I said, the symbolism I found to be fun and entertaining. This might come a little confusing because we really haven't discussed the three main characters. I introduced them a little bit earlier, but do you want to maybe discuss the main characters? Because I think they are all very interesting, especially their dynamics amongst each other.
Yeah, so Focine's the most valuable player here. She's pretty much the MVP of the book, even though the book comes from all three of their points of views. And I say she's the MVP because really I almost want to say witchcraft, because like you said, she was a nun, but she's coming into some sort of power that they're calling her a heretic. Because this goes against like the power of the saints, which the power of the saints should be like this pure power, like you mentioned with the honey. But her power seems, we don't know what she did to begin with. She's kind of like locked up by the king for some mysterious reason. She was doing things she shouldn't do. That's what we know. But yet he also wants to use her because they're in the siege, and he's like, just clean our water. We need clean water. Make us food. We need food. You can make stuff out of thin air. So she's kind of tasked with this. And so she comes into her power throughout this story. Gains more and more. Some of it transactional, as you mentioned. Some of it by accident. And she's really the test that comes at the end of the book between the saints and well, really her power and how they're going to get through this whole mess. Now that power is supported by the other characters, which is Servoin, as you mentioned, and Thela, and they play a huge part in this. Particularly Servoin is meant to guard her. Like, hey, the king's like, don't leave your tower until you make us food, right? And so she's guarding her, and then within that relationship, something starts to bloom. And then there's Thela, who actually has a past with Servoin. So all like really cool. I loved these main characters. I love how they kind of played with each other, their own transactional elements too, especially with Thela, how she finds a way out, finds a way out of this castle. But it doesn't take hold. She changes her mind a lot. So this book goes back and forth a ton between, are we fed? Yay! Oh, wait, no, we're not really. Are we free? Yeah! Oh, no, actually, I don't want that escape route. And then let's get free again. Oh, no, it changed my mind. So this book is just like, it's kind of a can't put me down book in a way with these main characters, because the plot is constantly changing and rapidly, and even location wise throughout this castle, which was intriguing to me. But yeah, how did you feel about the main characters?
Yeah, I really liked Focine specifically because she brings that kind of the wonder type of magic into this book. And what I mean by that is a lot of magic systems, especially anything published in maybe the last 20 years, very much they like to describe the magic system to a point where it's basically a science of that world. People are very aware of that, of how magic works. Whereas if you go back to maybe stuff written in the 80s or 70s, a lot of the magic there, it's not explained. In fact, it's very mysterious. And that's the point, is it's supposed to be fantastical. It's supposed to be mysterious. And Focine does that kind of magic. In fact, when she tries to do magic in a scientific, experimental way, it doesn't work at all. She has to just, like, it's almost like doing a magic eye test. She has to screw up her eyes, not pay attention, and then just start doing things. And that's the only way magic will happen. Because it's almost in its own way an act of faith. And I don't think she's getting it as a faith-based or, spiritual power necessarily. It's that it comes down to this: magic is supposed to be wonderful, not, a rote science. And I like that in magic systems. It's something that we don't get enough of anymore. And so when you get a new book, like I'm pretty sure this book was published this year, we just don't get these kinds of books anymore. And so I love when magic is like that.
I don't know. This was a kitchen sink magic book, and I was left the opposite. I was like, explain it to me. Tell me why. Where's the science? I was going crazy, especially because we know science and methodology plays a huge part in magic too, because she ran away or got dismissed from, I actually can't remember and don't care, from the nunnery or the priory as they call it. And that place was very structured. They almost had like cells and super scientific. They had to write notes and make calculations, and that magic works. It works, but it's more scientifical. Like they're scientific. Anyhow, they're coming up with ways to like destroy this army that they're under siege with. At one point, they come up with this catapult, but like it hits the mark every single time because of their magic and their calculations. So it's there, Rob. It is there, and that's the piece that I wanted. The piece that I thought it was gonna be is this messy magic you talked about, because she's up in her tower by the king's orders for them to come up with a way to get out of their situation, and she's like testing rotting meat and adding honey to meat, because honey's like this life force within their magic system somehow.
It's basically communion in their religion. Yeah, you're supposed to have
but it's
honey
also magical.
every church day, and so forth.
Yeah. Well, one of their churches is basically a huge beehive too, by the way. Like it's a building, but it's become a beehive, essentially, that the nuns take care of. So weird. But anyway, so she's testing things on dead meat to see if she can make it alive itself. Because she's like, well, got to start from somewhere. She's testing it with sulfur and flowers and different crazy things. And, the thing about this book
that was
magic,
great. That was great.
I loved that part.
She was like, if I can get the meat, because she's just got this rotting steak. She's like, if I can remind it used to be a cow, by giving it basically grains,
seeds,
it will remember and it will grow. And it's like,
it kind of worked.
That is insane. Like that's an insane thought. But that's the way her magic works, and But
that's what I liked about it, and I wanted more of that. I actually wanted her to beg to the nuns and be like, your stupid magic calculations writing down in your books, I don't have to do it that way. I'm gonna have some raw steak meet some weird ass mushroom, and haha, you all, I win. And I was waiting for that moment that never came. And that's what I mean by kitchen sink magic, is she kind of threw in points of this that didn't even matter. It built up the space, it built up the scenery around her, because they're always talking about her room stinks so bad, and she's so weak from starvation she can't even empty her piss bucket. Basically, her room is foul, and I'm like, where's that going? That's gonna go somewhere. Like maybe the smell will play into it. No. And so there's alchemy, there's definitely some divine magic, there's witchcraft in a way, sorcery, and then scientific type of magic. And then I just thought that it was going somewhere together. But no, viewer, no, reader, when you read this, it doesn't match. And that pissed me off. It pissed me off greatly, because I have come to be part of this new age magic systems, as you say, where things are explained. And maybe I'm conditioned, but I like it that way.
And I like it that way too.
I don't like it this way.
I'm not saying never do that. I'm just saying it's a breath of fresh air when you do get this kind of older school of magic. And I do feel like it does matter as the story goes, because like a lot of the early part of the book is the dichotomy of, and like I said, it's all symbolism. The entire book is just symbolism. But the cleanliness of the nunnery versus the filthiness of hers. And it turns out she's more pure than any of them. Than all the faithful, they fell for it, mostly hook, line, and sinker. Except for the prioress, the head of the nuns. She did not fall for it, because she probably is not very faithful. Because she immediately recognizes that the saints never come in person. They're not physical beings. They interact with us outside of the world. They're not supposed to come in person. So whatever these are, they're not the saints. And she recognizes that immediately and is severely punished for it.
Oh yeah, she yelled fake news from the get-go. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely clever in so many ways. This is the little book that could but didn't. That's what I think of. It's like there was so many great ideas. For me, all those great ingredients just didn't come together. It's like someone who can follow, like you could get your grandma's recipe. It could be handed down to you for centuries and worked, and people are like, oh yeah, this is the best recipe ever. But you're not good in the kitchen. This author, to me, was not good in the kitchen.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, so I guess let's go ahead and just review this book. Let's talk about it. So for me, I found this to be an enjoyable story. That on our tier list we have a 1 is a bad book, 2 is an okay book, 3 is a good book. It's a perfectly good book. 4 is a great book, and 5, that's our S tier. Those are books that are absolutely just something special. They stand above everything else. And so for me, I initially was thinking this is more of a good book. But as I started reading the symbolism, as I started getting the cringe from the body horror elements, like when one of the protagonists is sticking her hand into a wall, she's talking to this being in the crack in the wall. She sticks her hand in and she feels the whatever's in the crack start licking her finger. Like there's
Tenderly.
a full body cringe, and then it's like, well, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna need a finger, and she has to like push it back in, and it takes the finger, one knuckle, and then nope, not the whole finger, it has to go another knuckle. I mean, this is a level of just body horror, and this isn't the only spot. Like, there's people that were basically butchered while still alive, and they're happy to sacrifice their muscles to feed the people because they've completely fallen under the sway of these saints. And between just that strong empathic feeling that you get reading that kind of stuff, and then just the fantastic symbolism, I'm gonna have to say this is a 4 for me. I think I really, really enjoyed this book. And I know you don't feel the same way, but I think this is a book that's not for everyone, but for the right audience, this is a fantastic book.
Wow.
Like,
okay.
Like,
wow.
Have you ever read like Mask of the Red Death? Very kind of similar story. It is a Edgar Allan Poe's story about basically, and it's all the same kind of thing. It is Gothic horror with lots of symbolism. And, if you liked that kind of stuff, this might be the book for you. But the naysayer, it is your stage.
I am the naysayer. Okay. I mentioned before I don't have any issues with any of the themes in the book. Now, we didn't go over trigger warnings, but I should say as cannibalism, body horror, as you mentioned. At some point, I looked up, I didn't want to miss any, so I wrote them all down, like claustrophobia even. And then I lost it, but I wrote down a bunch of them. So definitely like a lot of trigger warnings. They didn't bother me. What I was missing was like the feeling around it. So I felt like everybody was just sort of passive about it and didn't care. Now, granted, a lot of them are kind of drugged up by like whatever they're feeding them. It causes this like, almost like they're drunk on it, right? They can't feel a thing. But there's characters who aren't drunk on it. They haven't drank the juice. And they're still impassive about it. They just don't seem to care that much. Like, they're just not affected strongly enough. And for me, I really like deep emotional characters. So there was this moment where Servoin and another very important character, which I won't talk about just in case people read this, but they're having an exchange about this because this person has actually lost body parts. And he says to her in this casual way of like, well, you would do it, wouldn't you? And she doesn't answer him. And then like they're on equal playing field in terms of like how cool they are in the story, I think, or how much they meant to the kingdom. And I just felt like it could have been like, he could have like pounded on the table, damn it, like I don't see you losing a limb here, you know what I mean? Like I just felt like I would have been more emotionally involved if there was a bit more rawness that matched the rawness of the book itself, like quite literally. I mean, we're talking about cannibalism and there was not any emotion, like hardly at all. Even like the sexual emotions and the feeling of want for some characters between each other. I read that this book was slow burn, so I was kind of excited for that. It wasn't. This book for me was an emotionally Sahara desert on all levels.
Okay.
And I just couldn't care less. When I really wanted to, I will shout to the rooftops that this book has very cool themes. And I think that that's cool. And that's why I was so emotionally invested. Not emotionally invested, but intrigued in the beginning for like 60, 70 pages. Because I'm like, this is some badass shit. We're finally getting cool witchcraft, sorcery, weird alchemy, magic shit. And I'm excited. And we have 3 strong female characters. You know I love that. But then, I don't know, left me wanting. It just didn't explain enough. So, I mean, I can't even let this book keep its points for the cool stuff. Because normally, you know me, I'll say like, this is like a 4 on like plot points and cool things, but I really didn't get into it. That takes it down to a 2. No, it's not even a 2. This is a 1. This is straight up 1. That probably doesn't shock you. I never want to read this book again. I can't recommend it to a single person. I can't think of a single fucked up friend that wants to read this very poorly written book.
No. I do not think it is
Nope.
poorly written. It is but we agree to disagree. This is I expected this to be a tough book to read for some people. And about midway through, I was like, yeah, she's going to hate this one. So
I don't know. You know what? This book could have convinced me if I was dying on that floor and if I myself would have ate that meat. You know, like give me a reason to want it. Because there's books that make you think questionable things and make you think, would I do that in that situation? I love when books play with human emotion like that and thinking, would I? Never was I transformed enough into an actual place and carried away in that moment in the story to feel like my heart was making that choice with any character. Because it just wasn't.
okay. Well, thanks again for watching this video. We really appreciate you guys watching and subscribing to the channel.
You know, it has been really great lately. We've had a lot more comments and we're really close. We've been at 399 on subscribers for so long. And I'm like, can we just get over that 399 hump? It'd be nice to at least see 400. But anyway, hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you back week to week. Leave some comments on our video. And we've actually seen a few regular commenters that maybe haven't subscribed yet. So if that's you, consider yourself called out. But either way, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week.